Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to our daily Hindu analysis. But before we begin, we have a couple of exciting announcements. Based on popular demand, we are bringing back this year's Target Prelims Crash Course for the 2022 Prelims. But this time the crash course shall be bigger and better. And unlike last year's current affairs only crash course on our YouTube channel, this year we are going to expand this initiative to cover the static portion as well, exclusively on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, followed by our popular current affairs crash course on our YouTube channel. This shall be a 50-day crash course beginning from the 5th of April and will run all the way up to 24th May. And in this unique 50-day revision program, the students will be provided with a daily revision plan, based on which daily mock tests will be conducted on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app. The following day, the test paper along with the concepts shall be discussed and analyzed by our leading faculties through a live session at 2:30 p.m. again exclusively on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app. This crash course is entirely free, but however, it does come with a cost. You have to pay the cost for this crash course by liking our videos, by subscribing to our channel, and without fail, download the BYJU'S Exam Prep app. So if you're looking to scale up your prelims preparation, we are offering you a one-stop solution on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app and as well as on our YouTube channel. Then the second announcement is that, as promised, we are going to bring out several new initiatives beginning from this month. And every Saturday, we are going to bring out a weekly Places in News in order to help simplify map reading for your exams. The first episode of Places in News, covering the current affairs of 21st March to 27th March, has already been uploaded yesterday, and the link for the same shall be provided in the description box below. So do watch the video and let us know how you're liking the initiative. And all the details and the schedule of the crash course has also been provided in a link in the description box below. So all you have to do is download the BYJU'S Exam Prep app and wait for the 5th of April for us to launch this exclusive crash course. So with this, let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by taking an article from the front page of the Delhi edition. This article deals with a historic trade agreement that has been signed between India and Australia. Yesterday, India and Australia have signed the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement or ECTA, and it is expected to transform the India-Australia economic relationship. It is essentially a free trade agreement, and just like any other free trade agreement, it is looking to reduce the barriers to trade. See, when it comes to trade between two countries, there can be two types of barriers to trade. One is tariff-based barriers, and the other is non-tariff barriers. An FTA is exclusively negotiated between countries to reduce both the types of barriers, through which tariff-based barriers such as taxes and duties are brought down, and sometimes even zero duty access is provided to certain products. And even non-tariff barriers such as connectivity, trade infrastructure, immigration issues, etc. are also addressed through such agreements. Through such free trade agreements, the two countries would be looking to facilitate the free movement of goods, services, investments, and as well as people. So the India-Australia ECTA covers trade in goods and trade in services and lays down the path for exploring the full potential of the India-Australia trading relationship. So in this detailed analysis, let us take an in-depth look at the key provisions of the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement and examine its impact on the India-Australia trading relations. See, this happens to be the first FTA that India has signed with a major developed country. Of late, India has renewed its focus on such free trade agreements with key trading partners, and recently in February, we signed a landmark agreement with United Arab Emirates. On similar lines, we are working on FTAs with other key trading partners of India, including Israel, Canada, United Kingdom, and as well as with the European Union. But the India-Australia ECTA, which has been signed, is said to be a watershed moment in the India-Australia relationship, because this free trade agreement was in the works for 10 years. And finally, both the sides have resolved all their differences to put this free trade agreement in place in order to take forward not just their economic relationship, but also the growing strategic partnership between India and Australia. As India and Australia emerge as the key pillars of growth and security in the Indo Pacific, and as they face a mutual threat from the increasing trade and military aggression of China in the Indo Pacific, the two countries have come together to not only forge a close strategic and military relationship through groupings such as Quad and through military exercises such as Malabar, but they're also seeking to forge a close economic relationship by putting in place the Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. This agreement is set to provide zero duty access to 96% of India's exports to Australia, and it will cover several key exports of India to Australia, including engineering goods, gems and jewelry, textiles, apparel, leather, etc. The two countries have laid down an ambitious target to boost bilateral trade in goods and services to the tune of $45 to $50 billion over the next 5 years, from the current $27 billion trading relationship that the two countries have. And it has been estimated by the Indian government that this free trade agreement alone will generate around 1 million jobs in India. In return, the agreement is also providing zero duty access to around 85% of Australia's exports to India and covers several top exports of Australia, including coal, sheep meat, wool, along with a significant reduction in duties on Australian products such as wines, almonds, lentils, certain fruits, etc. On the non-tariff side, the agreement is going to facilitate people-to-people relations between the two countries and will primarily promote the exchange of students between the two sides, along with promoting easier flow of professionals and tourists in order to boost cultural and economic relations between the two countries. As per the agreement, Indian graduates from the STEM domain, that is from science, technology, engineering and mathematics, they will be provided an extended post-study work visa to facilitate work opportunities for Indian students who are studying in Australia. Australia has also promised to put in place a visa program that would provide young Indians an opportunity to pursue working holidays in the country. But the biggest achievement of the free trade agreement is with regard to goods and services, because currently several Indian exports were at a disadvantage as compared to other competitors of India in the Australian market. See, Australia already has signed FTAs with major competitors of India such as China, Thailand, and Vietnam. These countries are labor-intensive countries, and they leverage their strong manufacturing base to boost exports to Australia, thereby enjoying a 4 to 5% advantage over Indian exporters to Australia. But with the signing of this free trade agreement, Indian exporters will also get a level playing field with their competitors, and this could significantly boost India's merchandise exports to Australia. Through this arrangement, the current bilateral trade volume, which stands at around $27 billion, can be easily boosted towards $35, $45, and $50 billion in the coming years. But India has been cautious enough to protect its domestic sector in certain key industries, where India's domestic manufacturers and producers face a stiff competition with the high quality produce from some of the leading sectors of the developed Australian economy. For example, Indian domestic producers have always feared losing out in competition to superior quality imports that could come in from Australia and flood the Indian market, especially in sectors such as dairy, animal husbandry, wheat, rice, chickpeas, beef, sugar, apples, toys, and iron ore. These specific sectors which are of concern to India, where Indian producers were worried that they would be driven out of competition through cheaper and high quality imports from Australia, those sectors have been classified as sensitive sectors by the Indian government under the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. In these sensitive sectors, India's domestic producers are being protected from Australian imports with higher duties, whereas the other key sectors where both India and Australia could stand to benefit, those sectors are being opened up with zero duty access and low tariffs and taxes in order to boost the bilateral trading volume. Few exports of Australia to India is expected to benefit through the zero duty access regime that is being put in place under the free trade agreement. Especially Australian export of coal to India will benefit immensely, which currently accounts for about 74% of Australia's exports to India. See, Australia is a major producer of coal and also happens to be the biggest supplier to India, especially for India's power plants. Currently, imported coal from Australia was being taxed at 2.5%, but going forward under the free trade agreement, zero duty access will be provided, which will benefit both India and Australia. It will not only boost Australian exports of coal into India, but through this elimination of duties and taxes on coking coal, it will also boost the competitiveness of India's steel exports, as the input cost for Indian steel industry will go down, which is currently heavily dependent on Australian coal imports. Similarly, with regard to other key raw materials such as alumina, both the countries will benefit because due to zero duty access, Australian exports of alumina to India can go up. And this will also benefit several Indian manufacturers as their input costs will go down, thereby boosting their competitiveness, which will allow them to increase the export of their products to other markets. But the agreement does take care of India's concerns, and it not only keeps away the sensitive sectors from zero duty access, but also provides for strict rules of origin provision in order to keep the benefits of the free trade agreement limited only to Indian and Australian producers. Because generally, a third country might try to misuse an FTA between two other countries by diverting its exports through a FTA country in order to enjoy the benefits of zero duties and lower tariffs. So to prevent such routing of products from third countries, a safeguard mechanism has been put in place in the agreement, which mandates strict rules of origin, and the exporters both in India and Australia will have to establish that the products indeed originated from these two countries, with significant value addition being done within the boundaries of these countries. It also provides for safeguard mechanisms to prevent any flood of imports, that to cheap imports from the other country, which could be detrimental to the domestic industries in the other. These safeguard mechanisms have been pushed by India after India had a bitter experience with its FTA with ASEAN group, and through such safeguard mechanisms, the adverse consequences of free trade agreement is being minimized in order to bring mutual benefits to both the parties. The Indian pharma industry, especially India's generic drug manufacturers, are also expected to benefit from this free trade agreement because a key non-tariff barrier is being addressed. The agreement will provide for faster approval for Indian medicines by Australian regulators on the basis of inspection reports and approvals granted from Canada and the European Union, whose standards and evaluation process is recognized by Australian regulators as well. So if Indian pharma manufacturers have obtained approvals in Canada and EU with the respective regulators, then it will make them automatically eligible to export into the Australian market as well, thereby reducing the paperwork and the delays, and thus will help boost India's pharma exports to Australia. Then finally, Australia has also addressed a long-standing demand of the Indian IT industry and the Indian government. The concern was that Indian IT companies operating in Australia were being levied double taxes both in India and Australia on the profits that they were generating through their Australian operations. So to avoid double taxation, Australia has agreed to amend local taxation laws to stop taxing the offshore income of Indian IT companies that are providing technical services to Australia. This will come as a major relief and a boost to India's IT sector, and it signifies the broad-ranging nature of this free trade agreement. So both the countries are hoping that the economic cooperation and trade agreement will truly be a watershed moment in their bilateral relationship, and through this, they are hoping to boost their economic and strategic ties to dominate the Indo-Pacific region. Now, the importance of this has been examined in another article on page number 14, according to which Australia is currently India's largest export destination in the Oceania region, and it happens to be amongst the top 15 export destinations for India's exporters. As per latest data, Australia happens to be the 17th largest trading partner of India, and India, on the other hand, is Australia's ninth largest trading partner. So, as per their ambitious plan, if they scale up their bilateral trading volume to $45 to $50 billion in 5 years, then it will help India and Australia to also secure and establish alternative supply chains in the Indo-Pacific, which currently is ruled by China-dominated supply chains. This vision of India and Australia is in line with the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, which these two countries have started in partnership with Japan. These three like-minded countries of the Indo-Pacific are working together to create alternative supply chains which are not dependent on China in order to diversify their supply chains and also to reduce their dependency on China and also to counter the economic and military aggression of China in the Indo-Pacific. Now let's take up an interesting article from page number 8. This special analysis article examines the global disruption in wheat supplies being created around the world as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war and how India is looking to fill this void by increasing its wheat exports in order to capture the market, thus representing a great opportunity for Indian agriculture. But this opportunity brings along with it several sets of challenges which India will have to first overcome in order to fill this void in wheat supplies. See, as we have discussed in previous sessions, Russia and Ukraine happen to be the top exporters of wheat in the world. They account for about 25% of the global wheat exports. And as these two countries went to war, their wheat exports have been hit, and it has been further disrupted by the crippling economic sanctions of Western countries against Russia. So this situation in Eastern Europe has led to a global disruption in the wheat supply chain. And this infographic over here will help you understand the importance of Russia and Ukraine in the global wheat market. As you can see, Russia and Ukraine have been top exporters along with other developed countries such as Canada, United States, European Union and Australia. Whereas India's share of the global export market is very low. And now that a huge void has been created in wheat supplies because of the Russia-Ukraine war, India is looking to tap into this opportunity to fill the void so that it can boost its wheat exports. See, even though India happens to be the largest wheat producer after China, its share in the export market is very low, as most of India's wheat production is consumed within the Indian market. As wheat happens to be a staple cereal, most of the wheat produced in India is consumed internally, not just for domestic consumption, but also to meet the food security requirements in order to help the government to maintain the required buffer stock to stabilize prices in India, and also to provide steady supplies to India's food security programs, such as the Targeted Public Distribution System and other legal obligations of the National Food Security Act. So until now, most of the wheat produced in India was being consumed internally, with very little focus being given to export of wheat. But now that a great opportunity has opened up in the global wheat market, the Indian government is looking to capture this opportunity to not just increase India's share in the global wheat market and bring in revenue, but also to use the opportunity to bring additional income to the farmers. But however, in achieving this goal, India will face few challenges because as warned by food security campaigners, India will have to first focus and emphasize upon local priorities in order to ensure stable wheat prices within the Indian market and ensure adequate supplies for food security within the country, before deciding on diverting the domestic supplies towards exports. First, let us use this infographic to understand the dynamics of the global wheat market. We need to know who are the key producers, who are the key exporters and importers. As discussed, Russia and Ukraine are without a doubt the top exporters. And between 2017 and 2021, Russia and Ukraine have exported 183 million tons and 91 million tons of wheat, respectively. Whereas during the same period, India's export of wheat was just a small fraction of this, and it stood at just around 12.6 million tons. Apart from Russia and Ukraine, the other top exporters are the developed countries of United States, Canada, Australia, and European Union. So clearly, these countries are way ahead of India when it comes to export of wheat. And as you can see, India occupies a very small position in the global wheat market. This is despite India being the second largest producer of wheat in the world after China. For India, export of wheat has always been a low priority due to its domestic commitments. And despite record bumper production every year, the domestic produce was always diverted towards domestic needs for creating the buffer stock and for stabilizing prices within India and to meet food security requirements within India. Out of India's total wheat supply of 613 million tons, only 2% of this was exported, with nearly 80% being consumed in the domestic market, with the rest being stored as buffer stock with the Food Corporation of India. So this is where a great opportunity lies for India in the current situation, because many countries in Africa, West Asia and Southeast Asia, they're all major importers of wheat, which have relied heavily on Russian and Ukrainian wheat supplies. Now that this route has been cut off, big opportunities are opening up in several African, West Asian and Southeast Asian countries, and India is looking to tap into this market. So India's priorities and focus would be on key importers like Egypt, which happens to be the largest importer of wheat in the world, and it imports nearly 93% of its requirement. Most of it was coming from Russia and Ukraine. Indonesia happens to be the second largest importer with a 30% dependency on Russia and Ukraine. On similar lines, several countries in Africa and in West Asia were also heavily dependent on importing wheat from Russia and Ukraine. This includes countries like Sudan with a 60% dependency, and other countries like Tanzania, Libya, Tunisia, and even Lebanon, Yemen, and UAE in West Asia. Now that wheat supplies to all these key importers have been hit, a big opportunity has opened up, which India is looking to tap, but this will bring India in direct competition with other developed countries which are major exporters, such as US, Canada, Australia, and the European Union. So as India looks to focus on these wheat importing markets, a dedicated task force has been set up by the APEDA, or the Agricultural and Processed Foods Export Development Authority. This task force will work closely with all the concerned ministries to lay down a path for India so that it can adequately meet its domestic requirements, along with capturing the export opportunity that is opening up at the global level. Fortunately for India, this global crisis in the wheat market has come during its prime harvesting season, which lasts between March to May. And this year again, a bumper wheat harvest is expected, which will not only be sufficient to meet the requirements of buffer stock and food security within the country, but also to fill the global void in wheat exports. So this opportunity has brought along with it a set of priorities and challenges for India. And the Indian government is looking to ensure that India plays a key role in the global wheat market, not just to stabilize the supplies and prices at the global level, but also to meet the domestic requirements and ensure that, in the end, the Indian farmers will stand to benefit through adequate compensation. But this is where a challenge could open up for India, especially at the WTO, as India could be targeted by the developed countries such as US, Canada, Australia, and European Union. If India tries to divert its buffer stock with the Food Corporation of India, which is procured through minimum support price given to farmers, which is a type of agricultural subsidy, then these developed countries could argue that India is breaching the requirements of WTO's agreement on agriculture, which places restrictions on government subsidy and support, which could be termed as an unfair trade practice by the other countries, and it could invite cases against India at the WTO. In fact, recently in March, India was accused of exporting rice from its buffer stocks. But India had justified its position against these allegations by stating that the recent rice exports were not from the buffer stocks, which have been set aside under the public stock holding programs. When such challenges come up from the developed countries at WTO, the Indian government and experts from India have always defended India by citing the protection offered through the Peace Clause of WTO's Bali Ministerial of 2014. Under this Peace Clause, developing nations were allowed to breach the cap on government subsidy and government support, and this has allowed developing countries like India to not only procure crops from farmers at MSP prices, but also to divert the buffer stock if required to meet food security requirements, and also doesn't prevent India from exporting these food grains by drawing upon its buffer stock. So while India can use the peace clause of the Bali Ministerial to defend itself against any cases by developed countries, it will have to parallelly ensure that it strikes a balance between its domestic and external priorities. And the current geopolitical crisis in Eastern Europe has given India this opportunity to emerge as a leading exporter of wheat and to play a key role in stabilizing global supplies and prices as well. Now let's look at this article from page number 12, which examines the impact of Western economic sanctions on India-Russia trading relationship and how India and Russia are trying to bypass the sanctions through a Rupee-Rouble arrangement, which can provide for an alternate payment system for continuing key Russian imports into India. As you know, Russia is a key supplier of oil and fossil fuels to India, and it also happens to be a major defense supplier to India. But the import of these two critical products from Russia could be hit because of the Western economic sanctions which have been imposed following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. As you know, India has largely taken a neutral stand on the conflict while indirectly backing Russia at the UN by abstaining from the votes whenever resolutions were brought up against Russia by the Western countries. Upon this, Russia has promised to continue its defense exports into India and has also offered discounted oil to India, which India has been very eager to buy in order to bring down its import bill. So in order to protect this critical trading relationship between India and Russia, the two countries have been examining alternate payment systems to bypass Western sanctions, and they are putting in place a Rupee-Ruble arrangement. In this context, Western countries have been trying to convince India and put pressure on India to not undermine their sanctions against Russia through such alternative payment systems. They have sent out multiple warnings to India to not increase purchase of oil and defense products from Russia, whereas Russia, on the other hand, is seeking to fast-track the alternate payment systems through national currencies with both India and China. So this Indian attempt to circumvent Western sanctions against Russia in order to protect India's core national interests has led to a series of high-level visits into India. Top diplomats and officials from US and European countries have been visiting India over the last few weeks to not just convince India to stay away from trading with Russia, but also to warn India with consequences in an attempt to put pressure on India as they see India to be helping Russia to circumvent the Western sanctions. On the other hand, top officials, diplomats and ministers from Russia have also been visiting India, and recently Russian Foreign Minister paid a visit to the country in order to secure Russia's trading relations with India. During the visit, the Russian Foreign Minister even stated that Russia will work closely with India and China to secure an alternate payment system in order to bypass these artificial roadblocks being created by the illegal sanctions of the West. And he also reiterated the Russian commitment to further strengthen military and technical cooperation with India. So this places India right in the middle of the geopolitical conflict between the Western countries and Russia, and especially when it comes to key oil imports, that to a discounted rate. India has defended its decision and has even gone to the extent of criticizing Western countries of their hypocrisy. India has termed this Western pressure as a campaign against India to prevent India from buying cheaper oil from Russia, whereas European countries, on the other hand, who happen to be the biggest buyers of Russian oil and gas, have continued their supplies despite the announcement of their own sanctions. So India has been calling out this hypocrisy of the Western countries, and in the interest of protecting its energy security, and in the interest of utilizing the global geopolitical opportunity to bring down its import bill, India has made it clear that it will pursue an independent foreign policy which is designed to protect only India's national interests. And in this regard, India is working with Russia to create an alternate payment system by putting in place a Rupee-Ruble mechanism. Such an alternate payment mechanism will help the two countries to bypass the SWIFT payment gateways which are currently under Western sanctions, and will help Russia to bypass the dollar route for its exports. To work out this arrangement, a team from Russia's central bank has already met with officials from the Reserve Bank of India, and they are quickly working towards identifying these alternate payment systems which have no exposure to Western sanctions. They're identifying specific banks and institutions in the two countries which have zero or limited exposure to Western sanctions, so that they can put in place their Rupee-Rouble exchange mechanism, so that India-Russia trade can continue without relying on the SWIFT system or the US dollar. This strategy of India has been outlined by India's foreign minister, even in the parliament, where he recently informed that a special inter-ministerial group led by the finance ministry has been established by the government to resolve the payment issues that we are facing with Russia. India has already capitalized on this opportunity and has imported a record 13 million barrels of discounted Russian oil just since the war began in February. This happens to be a very big increase in the Indian import of Russian oil, because we had imported only 16 million barrels of Russian oil in the entire year of 2021. And now, in just 1 month, we've already imported 13 million barrels, as Russia is selling oil to India at very discounted prices. This issue is also going to have implications for the military trading relationship between the two countries. As Russian defense supplies could be hit to India, India's defense ministry and all the armed forces are carrying out thorough assessments to evaluate the impact of Western sanctions and the Russia-Ukraine war on the supply of key Russian defense equipment to India. Because this could have a direct bearing on India's military preparedness. That too at a time when India is locked in a tense military standoff in the Ladakh sector with China. As of now, Russia has promised to continue timely deliveries of critical defense equipment to Indian armed forces. And in fact, India and Russia already have a successful history of bypassing any such Western sanctions. Because when we signed the S-400 air defense missile system deal back in 2018, even then, the Indian import of S-400 from Russia was threatened under the CAATSA sanctions of the US. CAATSA stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which is an American law that targets America's adversaries such as Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Under CAATSA, these countries have been placed under primary sanctions, and those countries which trade with them in critical sectors like oil and defense, they invite the risk of secondary sanctions. So India was at the risk of inviting secondary sanctions from the US under CAATSA, but India managed to bypass this through a Rupee-Rouble exchange mechanism, along with appealing to the US for a waiver as it is a strategic deal for the Indian armed forces. But this time the US may not be sympathetic towards India. But however, India-Russia do have experience in bypassing American sanctions and in creating alternate payment systems through their national currencies. Next, we have a few small articles that provide us important updates, especially for the prelims exam. This article refers to a recent scientific study which has shown that the process of evolution can actually happen at shorter timescales as well. See, generally when we think of evolution, all available scientific evidence has always shown that evolution is a long drawn-out process. Studies have shown that organisms have evolved when they are faced with threats such as habitat destruction, invasion of alien species, or pollution. In some cases, even competition between different organisms and species have driven evolution. Such evolution always happens to be a long-term process that occurs over the time scale of millions of years. But this recent scientific study, which has been quoted in the article, has found out that fruit flies displayed genomic evolution even in the short term from one season to another when they were faced with threats due to seasonal changes. The short-term seasonal changes in predatory conditions and in weather conditions has also been noted to contribute towards genomic evolution of fruit flies from one season to another. Next, according to this article on page number 6, important prehistoric artifacts and archaeological evidence and remains have been discovered near the riverine tribal settlements at Attappady hill ranges of the Western Ghats that straddle between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. The Attappady hill range is known for several prehistoric tribal settlements, and along the banks of three important rivers in the region, that is the Bhavani, Siruvani, and Kodunkarapalem rivers. Important prehistoric archaeological evidence and artifacts have been discovered by researchers, and they have found pottery shards, burial urns, and menhirs, along with stone tools, inhabited caves, burial chambers, stone circles, black and red pottery ware, apart from other terracotta images, stone carvings, and granite inscriptions. This points towards the prehistoric nature of the riverine tribal settlements at Attappady and sheds important archaeological evidence about prehistoric sites in southern India as well. Then finally, coming to the last article from page number 7, the Indian Army is all set to induct Russian MANPADS. In previous sessions, we have discussed what are MANPADS. MANPAD stands for Man Portable Air Defense Systems, which are basically short-range surface-to-air missiles that can be easily fired through a portable shoulder-fired rocket system. These MANPADS that the Indian Army is procuring from Russia is known as the Igla-S systems. And these short-range air defense missiles that the Indian Army has inducted is part of a much larger contract that India is exploring with Russia, and the final deal is still under review by the Defense Ministry. The initial batch of Igla-S MANPADS have been procured through the emergency procurement measures that were approved following India's recent military standoff with China and Pakistan. The Igla-S MANPADS are said to be very effective in air defense, and they come with a maximum range of 6 kilometers with an altitude of 3 kilometers. And these are all weather capable air defense systems that can be easily fired by an individual by using a portable shoulder fired rocket system. Now let's take a look at the mains practice questions. The first question: critically examine the provisions of the India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. The second question: evaluate the challenges that have recently emerged in the global wheat markets. What opportunities and challenges does it present for India? Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the answer writing portal, for which the link shall be given in the description box below. So as we bring our discussion to an end, I would like to remind you to let us know if you're liking these initiatives, not just by liking the video and by sharing your comments, but also by subscribing to our channel. Thanks for watching.